Whoops. You guys had to see my kitchen. Hello. Hi, everyone. All right, I'm bringing Michelle on. Welcome. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Jen. Hello.
You know what I love most about this shirt?
What?
Show up because for any like event, I don't ever have to think about what I'm gonna wear or anything.
Exactly. Exactly. I wish I had some, but I'm coming home soon, so I'll get it then.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome. We have some people with us today. We are today what we're doing, not our normal unscripted. Today we are going to get to know Michelle. So I'm so excited to introduce her to everyone. I love her so much. And we're going to hear about her origin story. We're going to hear about her experiences. So I'm just going to start and then we're going to take questions. So you guys can add your questions with that little question box and we'll answer some later. But I'm just going to start by asking, I'm going to ask some questions like I've never asked you.
Yeah,
Some of them I
I'm
have.
very
Yeah,
yeah, I that's what I was hoping for. Because we talk
yeah,
about a lot, but I'm sure there's things that you've never even thought to ask. I don't know.
yeah. So I'm sure we'll see where it goes. So I don't really ask crazy stuff. All right. So first start by telling everybody about your family, though, what your about your parents, um, where you grew up, and then I'll ask some questions.
Okay. So, as you know, my name is Michelle. I'm the co-founder of this organization. My partner is the woman above me, Melissa, and my family history is quite interesting. So I'm first generation Ghanaian American, and I grew up in central Pennsylvania. So something that I realized just a few years ago is in African heritage, we are very much tied to our ancestors and our ancestry. And several years ago, I found out that my great grandfather was one of the main liberators of Ghana from British rule. He was instrumental in that in 1957 and finally becoming independent. Yes, state college in the house. That's where I went to college. I'll get to that in a little bit. Um, he was an activist. He was also the chief linguist of the king of our tribe. So he was the chief linguist for the Asante, that is the king of the Ashanti tribe. And he held that title until he passed. He was very strong in his convictions. He actually even went to jail for 6 or 7 years because of what he believed in and the way that he felt Ghanaians should be treated. And he just wanted absolute freedom for Ghanaians and the way that they live their life and their culture and whatnot. And I know that's passed down through me. My grandfather was somewhat of a political rebel and had to take political asylum in London because he was, again, very instrumental in politics in Ghana. Again, he was a little bit of a rebel. And then I found out when I was like 18 or 19 that my great uncle was the president of Ghana. So my great uncle was the president of Ghana for 2 terms. His name is John Kufuor. Look him up. He's an incredible man. They call him the gentle giant. He absolutely is a gentle giant. I've met him a few times, and he's such a wonderful, beautiful man. And so when I came into activism, it almost felt like divine intervention. It almost felt like, hey, Caroline, hey, cuz, so happy to see you here. It almost felt like divine intervention. Like this is exactly where I was supposed to be, and I didn't even understand how strong of an influence my family had in just liberating people. And I realized the work that we're doing is liberating people. So I just feel really humbled and really fortunate that that type of blood is literally in my body right now. So grew up in central Pennsylvania, grew up near Hershey. If anyone knows where that is, it's a very white area. So growing up, the only Black girl in a town that was very interesting. Didn't really experience diversity. Went to Penn State College. Still didn't experience diversity. Um, Ended up going into corporate America. Still not experiencing diversity. So it's really interesting that now here I am, co-founded this organization talking about racism, because it's the very, I feel like I was uniquely positioned to do this just because my whole life I've been around, it's either white people or Africans.
I mean, it's in your spirit. I like
Yeah.
I mean, when we first met each other, I just like your spirit is so beautiful. And I do think, I mean, just in the way that trauma is passed down, I think that what you're doing has been passed down to you. So talk a little bit about when you say, you know, it was a white area that you grew up in, talk a little bit about, you know, what that was like what are your earliest memories of that, of realizing that you were Black in a white world, um, and you know, when did you sort of like notice that you were different?
Elementary school. It might have even been preschool. It might have been preschool. But I had no meaning attached to it. I just knew that I was the only person that had my skin tone very, 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 very early on. But I don't remember meaning anything probably until middle school. Um, Actually, no, I lied. Fourth grade, when I was 10, someone said the N word. And I knew how bad that word was. And I knew that it was just for people that looked like me. And my friend at the time, her name was Nicole, beat the kid up who said it on the playground when we were 10. And I think that's when I realized that someone could say something hurtful to me simply based off of my skin color. That was 10. Um, and it wasn't really until middle school, high school, when people started really dating, that it became apparent to me that I felt like my skin tone was a barrier in even dating in a white town. Um, and to be honest, when you live in an area where you're constantly experiencing microaggressions and racism, you try to cope however you can cope, mentally and emotionally and even physically, um, to be really careful to protect your space. And it's interesting because racism is not just controlling how you are physically, it controls your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It really controls the way that you see yourself, the way that you love yourself, the way that you see yourself in the world. And I grew up around white dolls. I would go to the store and try to buy makeup. I didn't have any makeup for my skin color. um, I I didn't have any Black Disney characters, right? Um, all the Disney characters that I watched were, well, actually, my favorite Disney character it was Pocahontas and
Mm-hmm.
Jasmine, because they were the closest thing that looked like me, but they weren't anything close to actually being Black. One was an Arab girl and one was a Native American. Um, so when you're constantly giving those messages over and over and over, not only do you not have representation, but you're experiencing microaggressions, part of you starts to almost wonder and believe if there's some truth to what everybody is saying. Even though deep down I knew I didn't want to experience racism anymore. And it's interesting that when people would say racist things, in the same time that they would say something racist, they would say, "Oh, Michelle, I don't mean you," right? So I said, "Okay, you don't mean me. Interesting. I'm African, and that seems to really interest people. So how can I fit in as best that I can," right? Because when you're in elementary school and middle school, high school, it doesn't matter what age you're in, you want to fit in
Yeah.
with whoever's around you, right?
Yeah,
So I said,
desperately.
okay, yeah, desperately, literally desperately. So I started to try to separate myself mentally from Black America, and I would say, you know what? No, I'm just African. I'm not. I'm not that stereotype that you think I am. I'm not part of that group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a different group. So I started to identify with some of those stereotypes. I started to absorb that racism myself, um, which was a very troubling thing to try to go through. It's like, okay, I know, like, I love myself. I love my Black skin, but this is what people are saying. I mean, many years later, I had to go to therapy,
Yeah.
but it was a struggle. It was really struggling trying to find joy and happiness in being Black when the world around me was telling me that I didn't matter. And then on top of that, being in school where there was racism, but my school never taught any Black history, which is American history, right?
Right.
So I wasn't taught about one Black author. I didn't know who James Baldwin was. I didn't know Toni Morrison. I didn't know anybody. So, yeah, it was difficult. People said like, "Oh my God, high school was like the best time of my life." I was like, "Are you fucking serious? High school was the worst." Like,
Well, what did you like? I'm so curious as to like, like? What did it feel like at the time? Like when you let's talk about high school, I guess, because that's when, you're most aware. Like, were all your friends were white? Like you were the only non-white person.
yeah,
So like you were like included by them, right? But you
right.
but what did that like? Did you always sort of have some other feeling? Like did you start to like feel like I don't know. I can't imagine what that feels like because when somebody like did because they couldn't really see you, right?
No, I never actually felt 100% included, ever. The first time that I felt my most calm, my most accepted was when I went to Africa when I was 19 or
Mm.
20. No, I think I was 20. First time ever being back on the continent where my family's from. I was there for almost a month for the very first trip to Africa. I was there for almost a month. And I remember being there for a couple of weeks and thinking to myself, I could stay here.
Mhm.
Which is interesting because at that point I was 100% an American girl. I didn't know anything other than being American. I mean, I loved African food because my mother made African food all the time, but that's about as far as I knew. And I would see my African relatives and family in the Bronx every year, but I didn't know Africa. So it's interesting that just going there for the first time ever, I thought to myself, I could stay here. Because
What
the
did it
first
feel like when you first got there? Though, like, did it like feel like, oh, this is a relief or something? Like to go from like an all white space to like an
yeah,
all black space.
um, I just felt calm. I don't know. It's just it's a different because everybody's Black. No one, it doesn't. No one's looking at you because of that. Like when they talk
Right.
about that white gaze. I can't tell you the amount of times that um you're walking in the town and white people are just literally staring at you. Like they're just staring. And actually they would stare so much to the point that I started to actually convince myself and tell myself the reason that white people are staring at me is because I'm pretty. Because if I didn't tell myself that,
Well, you
I
are.
would stare at me because they didn't like Black skin and I couldn't handle that reality. So I would purposely tell myself, they're looking at me because I'm pretty. They're looking at me because I'm pretty. They're looking at me because I'm pretty. And I would say it to myself over and over and over and over again, just to
Hmm.
not feel uncomfortable with people just like you would look back and they were still staring, or you would keep walking, you would look and they would still be staring at you. It's like the weirdest. It just happened to me the other day, and now that I understand it, I didn't remove my gaze from his. I was like, are we gonna do this? We're gonna have a stare
Hmm.
down. You know what I mean? Um, but back in the day when I was younger, it was just so incredibly uncomfortable because these people in this town did not live integrated lives, and I was probably the our family was like the only Black family that they saw. So it was like, who are these people just staring? And it was then going to Ghana and no one really looking at you. You're just like, oh, okay, I don't have to I don't have to code switch. I don't have to change the way that I'm acting, walking, speaking, dressing, nothing. I was just a
Can you
thousand.
explain that in case people don't know what that means, code switch?
So code switching is when you try and act in the way of the culture that you are presently surrounded by. So, um, if I was in a white space, I would purposely try to kind of like turn up my white voice, just get like really extra, like, suburban. I
Good
mean,
job.
and but I did it because I realized that it worked. Unfortunately, it
Yeah.
worked. You know, people
So
would be
what
like,
were some of the things like you heard like people say, "Oh, you sound white." So what were some of the things like people would say to you that now in retrospect were microaggressions?
"You're an Oreo." Someone that was an Oreo, which is like white in the middle, black on the outside. Um, that was weird. Not like,
What does that
and
even mean? White inside and black outside? What does that that is the most offensive thing I've
because
like
again, because I was, um, I don't, it's, I guess just because again, I was in a white town, so all they knew of black culture was what they saw on TV, was what they saw, you know, wherever, and to them, I wasn't culturally black,
right.
so they were able, so I, you know, they accepted me to an extent.
So what about like dating when you were in high school? What was that like? Like, did you date white guys, black guys? Like what
I mean,
when
there
you
were
were
no black guys
younger?
around.
Oh, right. There were no black
There were
guys
no,
around. That's right.
right.
That's right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I dated a couple guys, but the men that I dated, to be perfectly honest, were nowhere near good enough for me. But when you don't have when you don't have a large pool of people that you think even want to date you, you date who wants to date you, which is so shitty. Because then it started to lower my self-worth and my self-esteem because I feel like I knew deep down that they like actually weren't good for me, but I wanted to be a normal high school girl that dated, so I dated them anyways. And it actually hurt my self-esteem. It actually hurt the way that I viewed myself. The one guy that I dated, I realized afterwards that he was actually racist. His parents are racist. They were nice to me to my face until the second that I broke up with their son. His mother called me the N-word. You know, I'm 19 years old, and a grown ass woman is calling me the N-word because I hurt her son's feelings. And then when I think back, and you know, he would he'd said some racist things to me. You know, if he wanted to piss me off, I mean, he was incredibly abusive, but if he wanted to piss me off, he would be like, "I'm gonna go find someone that's white." Like he would say like disgusting things like that. Um, and it just wears you down. It makes you feel like I'm literally not good enough, all because of my skin color. And so you stay because you think to yourself, because again, years and years and years and years of the world telling you that you just don't matter that much, from people on TV to skincare to not seeing your natural hair on TV. I mean, so many things. And then you date someone and he's saying the same thing. It's hard to get out of that. It's really hard to tell yourself that you really matter.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just like I'm so sorry, Michelle.
That's right. I'm
That's
over it. He's a piece of shit. So. You know what I mean? I'm
no,
like,
I mean
whatever.
about all of it. It's so much
Yeah,
trauma.
yeah.
Like I'm sad to hear, But how did your family like did so back when you were younger, you didn't talk about any of this stuff with your family, right?
No, you know, that's interesting because all four of us, all me and my other three siblings, I think we were all going through things, but we just didn't talk about it. And I don't know why we didn't talk about it. I think maybe it's because, you know, I absolutely love my parents, but they migrated here and, you know, the American dream was real to an extent, but they were both working all the time to take care of us, like all the time. And they didn't have that family support like you have in Africa, where you can just
Hmm.
drop your kid off at any literally at any relative's house, and it's just a known thing that you take care of one another. Then you come to America and you don't have that sense of community. So my parents had to work all the time, and so we were going through these things alone because I knew my parents were stressed out. I didn't want to stress them out even more with like my issues. So the four of us, and it's weird now that like the four of us were all grown adults and we talk about these things that we were going through when it comes to race, and we're like, oh my God, you were going through this and going through that and living in the same town but having very different experiences.
Hmm.
Um, and it's beautiful that we can talk about it now because it helps us heal. But at the time, oh my gosh, at the time it was just like, that's why I ended up trying to separate my mind
Right.
and say I'm just African because I didn't know what else to do. You know, and again, your parents, being African, they also didn't know Black American history. They didn't,
Right.
they don't know what's been going on here for, for the last 200 some years. So they can't even really, they couldn't explain to me why racism existed.
Do
Like
you
they
think
were
that
the ones
they
that
felt it? Do you think that they were experience? I wonder how they were experiencing it because they had, I don't know. How do you think that your
my
parents
father
were experiencing it
my father
and
experienced it
coping?
in the
Hmm.
workplace. He experienced it. My mom experienced it, but she's just such a badass that she's just like, she'll just bust their face. She'll be like, "What is wrong with you?" Like she's just and she's been working at the same place for like at the same nursing home for almost like as old as I am, for I don't know, for like 25 years or something. So she didn't really experience it too much in the neighborhood. Her church people, she didn't really experience it there, and she didn't really have friends outside of church or work. So she didn't really experience it. My mom is very good at just like shutting people off and being like, you don't matter. My dad, not as much. Love my father, but I really do think that racism really deeply impacted him, as much as he doesn't like to admit it. Um, I don't think he dealt with it well. I think it made him he didn't really have friends. I think it made him kind of go inside of himself
Hmm.
a bit and spend a lot of time alone. He would tell me stories like, first moving to America. And again, this is why I held on to that African part, because I knew that it worked. Because we had this neighbor, and he said the neighbor never talked to him, never looked at him, didn't speak a word to him until the landlord told the guy, "Oh, Kofi's from Ghana." And all of a sudden, the neighbor started talking to him and helping us out and doing things. And my father was like, "What the? But like, you didn't even make eye contact with me until you heard that I was African, and suddenly now I'm interesting to you." So I knew that it worked.
So you used it
You
to
know?
cope. What about your siblings? Like you guys didn't talk about it at all growing up.
No, not while we were growing up. We were just doing our own thing. I found out later in life that my brother was like, at some point, he was like severely depressed and all, and so like there was, and I was like, well, I mean, he's literally one of my best friends now, and I had no idea that he went through like, that he went through these things, like massive depression, and I found out after I graduated high school that the same guys that I thought were my friends in high school were racist towards him, which
Mm,
doesn't, like, how can you like me but be rude to my brother? It doesn't make, and I had no idea, but because we didn't talk about it, I didn't even have an opportunity to address it with my friends. I had no
right.
clue. I had no clue what was happening. No clue.
Wow. So are you and you can anything I ask you you can be like, no, I don't want to talk about it on the live. But like can you talk about how your are you willing to talk about how your friendships with the people you grew
Sure.
up with have changed and evolved? You're a little frozen.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, wow, how have they changed and evolved? Whew.
I
Um,
know that's a very painful subject. I know, I'm sorry.
no, no,
But
no,
you
no,
don't
no.
have to answer. We can talk about something else.
I'm just trying to think. I'm like, I shouldn't have been looking at the comments a little bit, but like, I just want to say, I don't know what's happening, but it's like Black Lives Matter. If we like, Black Lives Matter. If anyone in here says All Lives Matter, I don't think you get it. Black Lives Matter.
Oh, wait,
Anyway,
is there someone? There is someone in the comments, I think, who's causing a problem, and I don't know how to get rid of them.
yeah.
But
Um, I know you know who you are. Black Lives Matter.
yeah, when I see it pop up, I can figure out how to block them. So
Thank you. To be
if
honest,
you
like
come
I'm
back, I think I can. If
right.
if if she comes back, I think I'm able to block her. Thanks, Mia. Mia says ignore
Mia
her.
says
Yeah,
ignore her. I'm trying. Like
yeah.
I see. I can ignore her, but what upsets me, yeah, for Charlotte.
Charlotte. It's Charlotte. It's Charlotte. If you rear your racist head right now, I'm gonna block you if I
Yeah, I
can,
have no. I
as
don't
soon as I gotta click on it.
because
So if you
this is
see me do this, it's because I'm clicking on it.
because like this is like growing up, I never would have done that. I never would have called someone out in front of their face in the moment and been like, "You're racist. That's not freaking cool. Black Lives Matter." I wouldn't have done that. because I was so fragile and I was so scared of being the Debbie Downer. And my friends, um, there were times where racist things happened and people said racist things, and whew, like I didn't know how to deal with it, Melissa. I had no clue how to deal with it. And so I let a lot of racist things slide. I had a friend once. We were friends. I would go over there all the time and we would party. I'd be there till like 4 o'clock in the morning. And one day he said the N-word. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? And he was like, I don't mean you. I just, I don't have an issue with black women. I have an issue with black men. And I
I
was like,
don't mean you. That statement of I don't mean you. Like, what does that feel like when you even think about that now?
um, I don't know. I'm like, no, you do mean me. You do mean me, because if you didn't know me personally, I would be in that category. And it angers me because like the love of my life is black, and my
Mhm.
brothers and my father, I mean, they're all the loves of my life because I love them for life. Um, just so absurd, And now I'm in a space where, like, if I'm gonna become friends with another white girl, if we can't talk about race, I can't be safe in that relationship, in that friendship. Um, Trying to talk about racism with my friends growing up was very hard because not only did they not get it at all, and that we weren't, um, I can see you working over there, and that we,
Sorry.
it's all right. I'm going to pause and see you.
Okay. I just hit her. She,
All right.
although I think she said something like, I'm 11 and I don't know what racism is. I think that it was a troll. But either
Probably a troll.
way, she's
Yeah,
out.
you're not 11. Stop it. I don't think you're 11. Anyways, um,
Sorry.
or maybe she's 11 and her parents have been saying, all lives matter to her for whatever. Anyways, um, so trying to talk about racism with people who had no understanding whatsoever of what racism means, because we grew up in a school that did not teach it whatsoever. Every time I talked about racism, it was met with skepticism. It was met with, are you sure? Are you sure that that really happened? Or, oh, that's so awful. Or, maybe they didn't really mean it. And when you're constantly questioning people, it made me start to question myself. It made me
Yeah.
start to be like, you know what? I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I don't want to bring up this racism that I literally just experienced right now, because I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I remember even this just happened a few years ago, being at Avalon Beach and being in a bathroom. Now, if you've been to Avalon Beach, it is
I've
very
been.
it is very white. There is
Hmm.
hardly any people of color that go to Avalon and those beaches in Jersey. And I remember being in a bathroom and this white woman came out of the stall, and it looked like she literally wanted to kill me, Melissa. Like the anger and like disgust in her eyes was seeing me in that bathroom was visceral. And it was one of the only times I was actually scared. Even though she was a little blonde woman that I was taller than, I was actually kind of scared because of how much she was looking at me with hatred. And a friend was with me at the time, a white friend. And when we left the bathroom, I said, all I said was, did you see that? And she goes, yeah. But in that moment, she said nothing.
Right.
And
And how did that make you feel? I know the answer, but
it made me feel deep down like I really couldn't actually trust her. Like, the
right.
fuck? Because if that happened, like, I used to get suspended in high school for sticking up for people. Literally. I would literally get Saturday detention or after school detention or whatever for sticking up for people. And like we didn't even have to be best friends. And so
You did
then
your project in high school on the Holocaust.
I did my
You're
project in high school on the freaking Holocaust. That's how much I care about other people. I don't need to be Jewish or white to see the Holocaust and be like, oh my God, I want to talk about it. This is terrible. We have to talk about this. We have to make sure this isn't happening again. I was 18 years old doing that. Right? So you just hope that people do the same for you. And then you realize that it doesn't happen that way. Um, Not everyone has that strength. Not everyone has that courage. And it made me feel like in those moments, it makes you feel really alone and just like it's like, this is my best friend, but she saw it. Why wouldn't she say anything, you know? Um, I remember when I was 23, I'm gonna talk about this. When I was 23, it was the first time that I had my first bad cop experience. And I was at a club. They walked into the club, 5 police officers, all dressed in black with bulletproof vests on that said crime unit. Now, mind you, I mean, I'm still very skinny. I'm like 117 pounds. But back then, I was like 112 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm this little girl, skinny girl, and all these cops come into the club to take me out. And I'm with all my friends. All my friends. And like hardly anyone followed me out, which I thought was fucked up. So I go out, and they literally thought that I was a sex worker who had stolen from somebody after going home with him. Like, they thought that I was her because I fit the description of a dark-skinned, mid-height woman. And at the time, I worked at Nationwide Insurance full-time and Calvin Klein part-time. I had 2 freaking jobs, and they're accusing me of committing this crime. And which is interesting because the guy that thought that I was her, I'm like, you really took home a girl and slept with her and you have no idea what she looks like? You think that I'm her? What's wrong with you? Like, it must have been the first and only black girl you've ever slept with, because how do you think that I am her? Stop it. So the cop just treated me so terribly and so guilty. I'm going to be really vulnerable right now. I started like peeing my pants because
Yeah.
that's how terrified I was. I'm a grown woman. I'm 23 and I'm literally starting to pee myself because I'm thinking I'm going to be taken to jail for something I didn't do. So and again, I didn't understand police brutality either. I just knew that the way I was being treated was wrong. And so I said to him, I said, you can't treat me this way. Like, after he realized who I was, there was no apology. There was no nothing. He was just like, and so I was like, no. Like I wanted an apology, you know? I was like, you can't treat me that way. He turns around, comes back into my face, and he goes, this is your fault. But like screamed it. He like screamed, this is your fault. And I said, that's when I realized. I go, my fault for being black? And he just walked away. And a white cop at the time, she like grabbed my arm and she like pulled me, and she goes, I think you should go report him tomorrow because I've seen him be racist in the past. And I said, okay. And so the next day, it was a white female cop said this literally a decade ago. So this has been, this has like always been a thing. And so I went to the police station to report him, and they're like, oh yeah, we've gotten reports about him before. He needs to take some racial sensitivity courses. And I'm like, oh, okay. So explain to me why he's a lead officer on an investigation where the suspect is black when you know that he's a racist.
Right.
What was even more fascinating to me looking back at it was the white cop, didn't step in the moment. She
Right.
didn't say something when it would have mattered. Why did you wait until after it was over to say, by the way, I've seen him be racist before. You should go report him.
Yeah,
Say
I
something.
almost like, what's the point of that? Like, how do you even like be grateful for that? You know?
See, and the thing is, at the moment, I was so grateful.
Right.
I was like, oh my
Right.
God, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I'm
Oh,
older and
that's
I'm
so
like, the
fucked up.
fuck? Right now I'm like, hold up. Like, it's that whole thing, oh, just some cops are bad. I'm like, that cop, the female cop, she wasn't a bad cop, but she wasn't being a good cop either.
Right.
Because in that
She was
moment,
an accomplice to it,
she
right?
she did nothing in the moment. Um so yeah, so now that I'm, when I started became, when I became an activist, I knew that I was going to lose friends. I
Right.
knew deep down that once I started this work and once I started talking about the things that really mattered in my life, there were going to be white friends that dropped off, because for the majority of my life, there were people in my life I knew had some racial issues. I was just the exception to the rule. I allowed them to be in my life because, again, I wanted to fit in. But I knew that this was a turning point where I could no longer allow those friendships in. I shouldn't have ever been allowing those friendships in. It made me feel bad about myself that I enjoyed that and I allowed it. And there are friends that have fallen off, but it just left so much room for so many cool
Mhm.
white girlfriends who I can talk to, and who can see me, and who I know that I can trust. And talk about my experiences, and you're going to believe me, and you're not going to gaslight me. You're not going to be skeptical. I mean, it's somewhat, it's like mental, it's like almost like abusive, you know? It's like, can you imagine going home to your husband every day and being like, babe, this guy at work keeps sexually harassing me. And he's like, I don't know. Did he though? Did he sexually harass you? Are you sure? Maybe he didn't try it, honey. You wouldn't trust your husband.
No.
You would no longer want to be married to him. And
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? And so that is how I feel now. Um,
How do you trust anybody? See, this is the thing, because in the macro, like all of America is saying that to you because you're Black, right? Like in every situation. So how do you have move through the world with any sense of trust? I mean,
mm, Vibrations, to be honest, vibrations, intuition. Um, there are some people, you know, you're just around, you're like, I just feel a connection to this person. Um, and some people you just know, I don't trust this person. You have to be really, I think too, like, I mean, just humans in general, but specifically when you talk about that, I think it's important for Black people to really practice learning how to strengthen their intuition, because it's
mhm,
really important who you allow into your life. Humans in general, but we're talking about race. It's important to strengthen that intuition. If something doesn't feel right in your body anywhere, something isn't right.
right.
Something isn't.
You're so good at that because like you're a coach, and you like I feel like you coach me sometimes just for like, and I like I get free coaching. But like, can you talk about how you sort of like integrate this idea of like how your mind and body, and you're also into like healthy eating and things like that, and how all that's connected, and like how like your philosophy on how all that's connected.
I think it's all connected because I think the things that we put in our bodies, whether it's through what you're listening to, what your eyes are watching, especially what you eat, clouds your judgment, clouds your mind. It I mean, we know that it impacts your brain. We know that the foods that you eat can help clarify your brain or make it feel foggy. You know, it's like when um you know, it's like eating meat. After I eat meat, I feel heavy and tired. When I eat a mango, I can like, I want to go for a jog or like go to the gym, right? So I think all those things are really important to try and clear your mind of the fog and clear your body of the toxins that are potentially um, blocking your senses. I think it's really important to be in nature. I think when you're like, I mean, that's why, you know, you have apps that are, you know, the rain sound or the ocean sound, because the more that we're connected to nature, I 1,000% believe this. I believe that that increases our intuition because we're from nature. I love technology, right? But that's not natural to the human body. So I make it a point to sit in the sun. I make it a point to, you know, have a lot of green things in my vision. I make it a point to eat fruit pretty much every single day. I started meditating again. And I think all these things are so important. It's so important to listen to your body. And if you have a thought come up and you have a subsequent emotion, think about what thought just caused that emotion. Think about your body's response to the way that that thought just made you feel, and notice that. Just take notice to that. That day in Starbucks, I something literally told my body to go to that Starbucks,
Mm-hmm.
and I just listened. The biggest takeaway that I got from therapy was that I wasn't listening to myself. And when I started listening to myself, my life changed upside freaking down. 2 years after this, now here we are, doing all these amazing things and public speaking and going around the country. And it's what I've always wanted to do. It's funny because when I was 5, I had a recurring fantasy that I was in a plane by myself wearing a light color blue suit, and I was being flown around the world helping people, right? But I let the
Mm-hmm.
world distract me from that vision. I let the world tell me this is what you're supposed to do. And this is the way that you're supposed to do it. But the way that I was living my life was not getting me to where I wanted to go because I was following the status quo. And when I started paying attention to myself and what I really wanted, my life changed so fast. So,
You
so, so,
said
so fast.
okay, so I'm interested in that because I was just going through these comments. You said you've told me that back in, right before Starbucks happened, you had been in Ghana, and that it was, oh, I know what it was, the slave catching
Yes.
situation. So would you talk
Thank you
about
for
that?
thank you for reminding me about
Yeah.
that. So what really, I think what really set me off, what like where the fire came to realize that activism was where I was supposed to be, was I went back to Ghana in 2017,
Hmm.
and I went to a slave dungeon for the first time ever. And that was an experience that I think
What is
everybody.
that? Will you tell people what that is?
So a slave dungeon is where the Europeans, the British, kept the enslaved people that they either bought or captured, and it was they were there in the structure awaiting departure to wherever in the world they were going to be taken for slavery. And I went there, and I could literally feel the spirits. I could physically feel the spirits. Like I got nauseous. I almost puked. I stood where they stood. Like on the
Mm.
ground are like mummified. Not to be this is just the truth. Mummified feces, mummified, regurgitation, because they were so sick in those conditions. There was hardly any oxygen, hardly any light. Um, they were they were tortured there. If a woman didn't want to sleep with one of the British soldiers, she was punished for it. Um, uh, just terrible. If a slave was problematic, they would keep him in a separate room where there was very little oxygen. And if he tried to get out of that room, there was a dog waiting on the other side to tear him to shreds. But no matter what, his fate was death, because that room was like somehow structured in a way that the oxygen was eventually going to run out, and
Mm.
they would suffocate to death very, very slowly. So you're in there and you're hearing these stories and you're standing where they stood and you're like, I have to get out of here. So I like walk out. I remember my aunt was with us and she goes, Shelly, are you okay? And I was like, nah, auntie, I am not okay. I am not okay. I hate this place. I'm pissed.
Mm.
So I remember going to the very top of the structure and looking out over the ocean and trying to imagine what it would have been like to hear my family members be like, hurdled onto a boat like animals and taken away, to know that you are never, ever, ever going to see them again. Can't say goodbye. You can't hug them. It was disgusting. And when I came back to America, it was impossible for me to look at a Black American and think, you could be my relative. You could be my friend in Africa. I don't know. You could have ended up being my family. So when I saw these two men in Starbucks, I thought to myself, these are my brothers. I don't know. Maybe they have Ghanaian blood. These are my brothers. I have to do something. I can't just sit and watch them. Like what? That's part of my nature, anyways. But it was. It wasn't a matter of am I going to do something. It's what am I going to do? Like what am I going to do to help my brothers right now?
And it was that moment. I I'll never forget that moment when I looked over and saw you. You were
Yeah,
like fierce, as
I was
you
pissed.
always are.
Pissed.
Yeah. Do you want to take a couple of questions? It looks like a lot of people have asked questions.
Yeah, sure.
So let me look at some. Oh, they're small. Um, oh, here's one. When did you realize racism was systematic and structured?
Late. I didn't realize it until mid-20s. Christina, I don't know why I'm such a badass bitch. I just am, okay?
She is.
um, Probably
I'm so
mid-20s.
lucky. Yeah.
When I realized that something's wrong. Like you can tell, like something just does not add up here. Like there is clearly a disconnect with this. This just doesn't make any sense. And um, I purposefully didn't want to look into it because I wasn't ready for my life to be flipped upside down. Because I
Right.
knew once I looked into it, everything was going to change. My friends were going to change, and I wasn't ready to go through that yet. Like I didn't start therapy until I was 26.
So you knew you found out sort of in your realized somewhat in your 20s that it was structural, but then you squashed it down again
Yeah,
because it was too painful.
I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole because,
Yeah,
once I did, I mean, now here I am. Now it's just
yeah.
like, I'm like chucking down the hole, just trying to find more and more and more. And there's always more. It's always evolving. It's always morphing. But I feel like it's almost my duty. Like, I have privilege in the sense that I don't have that ancestral trauma in my DNA of
Right.
enslavement. I don't have that. I can't imagine the pain that I feel, even though that's not my family history. Oh my God. So it
Can you
almost feels
explain that to people? Because I don't think that everyone understands that idea of ancestral trauma.
ancestral trauma. I mean, they've proven that trauma is passed down through your DNA. So you can feel pain from your lineage. Literally, you can feel that pain, and so it is a privilege to be African. Because I don't feel that, and there's a disconnect in understanding. There's a disconnect in just physically feeling that within your body. So I feel as though, even though it's very hard for me to do this work, it wouldn't be as emotionally or mentally taxing if my ancestors were a product of slavery. I would just be in a rage, to be honest with you. I would be in an absolute rage all the time.
Yeah, there's a quote, I don't know, it's a James Baldwin quote. I'm not
Yeah,
going to get it right, but you look it up for okay. Oh, here's a good one for you, Michelle. It says, "What were the qualities in a therapist that you found helpful?" And I'm going to get rid of the question so people can see your
sure.
face.
Um, well, he wasn't white.
Mm.
I knew I was going to be talking about racism and being black. And um, because of my experiences with white people throughout my entire life, I wanted to be safe. So I found someone who wasn't white. He was Hispanic. And because I also had an issue with men, again, because I allowed myself to be in relationships with men who I knew weren't that good enough for me, who I knew deep down had racial issues, I thought to myself, maybe I should get a therapist who was a man, since I'm having men issues. I didn't want a therapist who was a female who might potentially agree with me just because she was a female. I wanted to make sure that, like, I was really um, just in safe hands, right? Um, this therapist changed my life. I often think about sending him like an edible arrangements because he just and he was very gentle, and he just helped me understand that everything that I needed was already within me. Like, it 1,000% changed my life. Um, Therapists aren't really supposed to give you their opinion, but
Mhm.
the one that actually interrupted me, and he was like, Michelle, I know I'm not supposed to give you my opinion, but it seems like you almost always know what to do, but you do the opposite. Why? And I was like, oh my God.
Mm,
I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh yeah, all I have to do is listen
mm.
to myself. He was like, yeah. So he
There's a
did so.
follow-up. There's a follow-up to that. And somebody
Yeah,
said they're training to be a therapist, and what can they do to be more trustworthy?
to be more trustworthy.
To a
Um,
person of color, yeah.
you have to do that. You have to do the educating. You know, if I walked into a therapist's office and they had no knowledge of systemic racism at all, I mean, I would walk right out. I would walk out immediately. Um, because how can you? Because your client is going to want to talk to you about race. How can you help them through their racial identity development if you don't understand racism? My therapist wasn't a white man, so he understood that. So
Right.
you need to do that, and you need to do that internal work. You have to check your own biases. You know, any white person that says that they don't have a bias, any kind of racial bias, you're just not telling the truth. Because I lived with y'all my whole life, and if racism was so terrible that it could impact me, and I had biases against Black Americans at one point in my life, no one is safe from it.
No one is safe.
You're
White
not special.
supremacy is
No,
exactly.
no one is special. You have them. You just need to see where it's turning up in your life. So especially as a therapist, do that work. Do that work.
So here, this is a big question. What strategies do you have to deal with white people?
What strategies do I have? Oh, sometimes laughing. I have to be like if someone said that I'm coming, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind. What strategy to deal with people? I try to meet people where they are. If honestly, if you're not open to having a conversation with me, there's nowhere for me to go. There's nowhere for me to go. Um, and I have a lot of amazing friends that I can call and vent to. I pretty much call Melissa every single time that I'm frustrated with a white person or with white, it's just a thing, um I don't know, to be honest, like sometimes just like working out, getting outside, going for a walk, trying to calm down, trying to meditate, trying to remember that they weren't taught anything either, because I was once there. I went to the I went to the schools, right? And trying to remind myself that if I can tell a person's asking because they sincerely want to know something, I'm going to be gracious. I will spend time with you, talking to you, answering your questions. I'll talk to you because because the work that I do is basically rooted in like liberation, not just of white people, but of black people. I want to
Mhm.
lessen as much racism as possible on my own people. So I'll talk to you. But if you're asking me in a way that's just trying to challenge me, I have no time. I have no time for ignoring what I know to be true. Sometimes I have time. Sometimes, I'm like, you know what?
You're very generous. She's very generous.
Like, you know what? I have
Sometimes I
time
have to be like, don't talk to that person.
for that. Yeah, I just have to remember to meet people where they are, and if I can sense you're not going to be open, I need to preserve my energy because I still experience microaggressions and racism on top of this. So, um, yeah, or
You want to
directly
talk
they'll
about
go
the
back
people,
to my page.
right? Do you want to talk, just mention like what we talked about earlier, the people in your DMs?
Yeah, a lot of people in my DMs. I appreciate wanting to know more and do more and be better. That's great. That's wonderful. But Melissa and I have been doing this for over 2 years. We do not get paid for what we do. We don't have any corporate sponsors yet.
Yeah.
Um, yet we only get paid when we do a speaking engagement. So please understand that when you come into my DMs and you ask me to do more work for free, that is incredibly exhausting. We give resources every single day on our page, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, every single day for you to follow. We, I mean, Google is your best friend. Any other subject that you want to learn about, you Google, right? I mean, I Google literally everything. So when you come into my personal space, like someone recently started off a question with, I have a deep question for you. And right away I knew if you have a deep question for me, then you should probably be paying me because you're about to ask me to do emotional labor for you.
Right. Right. And you're a
I'm
complete
already
stranger. You're a
a
complete
complete stranger.
stranger.
I have a deep question for you. I'm like, I don't have any more. What, like, how much more, like, should we be giving? We spend hours a day on
And
media, hours a day.
exactly, exactly. And every Monday during this time, 8 p.m. EST Eastern, we answer your questions. All your like dumb, embarrassing questions. But they're not dumb and embarrassing. They feel like that to you, but all questions are good questions. So you can ask us then.
Yeah, someone said, do your Googles. Do your Googles. Someone today asked me, she was like, she goes, would you feel weird if someone came up to you that you didn't know to introduce themselves? She's, a white woman. She's like, I just want to help so bad. I just want to go up to black people and ask to pray with them. I'm like, don't do that. You're doing it
Mm.
solely because they're black. That is so weird. If I were Vietnam, I'm like, because you have no idea who, like, what? I was like, do not do that. and then it was like, and she's like, oh, I've gone to marches, I've done this, I've signed petitions, I've done that. And I said, okay, what books have you read to understand racism? None. And I'm like, see,
See, all right, this is an interesting
none.
one. This is one that I have heard before, and I think people have this question. As a white person, can I call black folks my brothers and sisters?
If I feel really connected with a white person, I'll call them my brother or sister. But don't just be calling people brother and sister if it's not that deep. Because
Right.
because like, now, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. Like most black and brown people, actually no, most black people, I would say you're my brother or my sister. I call black women sis all the time. I call black men my brother all the time. I would not just call black people brother and sister if you don't have a deep connection with them, um, because it's also quite not like white culture to do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand, I've never heard, um I mean, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's more of a black culture thing to be like brother sis,
Yeah,
you know.
I would never do that. I mean, I've had friends who are black call me like, "Hey sis," but I don't say "Hey sis" back. Like, I just don't feel like it's my thing to, like, I don't think it's mine as a white person to do that. I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. It's got to be deep. It's got to be deep because it's deep for us.
Yeah.
Someone said not in these streets. um
Brio.
yeah, yeah, no.
Let's do one more. Let's do one more last question. Ah, I think this is the same person. I've heard black-led orgs don't want help from white volunteers. Do you think that's true?
Do I think that that's true that they don't want white volunteers? Um, I mean, I guess it depends on person to person. It depends on organization to organization. Um, I mean, we have to be careful too. We have to be really careful in who we allow in our spaces, because you want to make sure that that person that's volunteering has done their homework and understands systemic racism, systemic oppression, knows how it manifests. Because what I'm seeing right now is a lot of white people, who are waking up, and it's the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the other day I cried seeing all the white people marching in Philadelphia. I got goosebumps because I was like, yes, finally, they're waking up to be in this fight with us. But the other issue that I'm noticing is that they've just jumped to action without reflecting on their own biases. Um, and when you do that, it gives off like a white savior feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, someone today was in my DMs that they literally created a website to for black voices to be heard, and to raise money for Black Lives Matter and give resources. And they wanted to know if I would write for their website. And I was like, not only are you asking me for extra free labor, considering that I already have, made a website, I said, you're acting as though black people need you to create a website just for their voices to be heard. They're already making websites. They're already making blogs and doing this work. All you need to do is just direct people to that. Say, hey, go follow this black person, go follow that black person. That's it. But without doing that work, and she didn't even understand that what she was doing was a very savior type of thing. You're just like, we just want to help and we just want to do whatever we can. You know what you can do? You can read some books and address your own racial biases, because you don't even realize that what you're doing is very, not only white savior, but asking more of a black person that you have never met in your life to write for your website, which means you're not qualified to be doing what you're doing. You need to be listening. So the fear, I would say, is, like, for instance, if I had a Matt McGorry on my team, I'd be like, yes. I'd be like, I'll
Right.
take Matt, I'll take Francis Maxwell, I'll take these people, I'll take Melissa. But if you haven't done that work, it can be potentially dangerous, because there could be microaggressions flying that you weren't prepared for. So if you want to volunteer in these things, you gotta do the work. You have to understand
Exactly.
what you're doing. You wouldn't show up to battle without a weapon, right? You wouldn't be like, hey guys, I'm here to fight this war with no gear, no bulletproof vest, no nothing. You wouldn't set up to run in a marathon without ever having trained a day in your life. So that's what we're kind of seeing right now. Like, again, we love the energy, but there's a little bit too much jumping into action without seeing where it's showing up in your own life, where you work, where you hang out, where you shop, the people around you, your friends. That's what you should be focused on, not focused necessarily on Black people, focused on where white supremacy lives within you.
Exactly. White people. Focus on white people.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that's what we want. I mean, more than anything, we want you to just examine the ways that you have been compliant in,
Yeah.
you know, in a lot of ways. So that's what I want to see. I want to see my white friends doing that work. I want to see my white friends reading, understanding, um, so that I can just feel, because, like I said, I don't have to be a specific group of people to care. Like this past July 4th, I could not celebrate on July 4th. I couldn't
Mm,
do it because at the time I was in Texas living with my boyfriend, and there were kids in cages in Texas.
right.
I'm not Hispanic. I'm not South American. I'm not Central American. But the fact that that was going on in that state, I could not get behind the holiday and have a good time. I couldn't
Yeah,
do
I
it.
don't know. It's a terrible, it's hard to even when America's like this, but yeah.
Yeah, it was hard for me. And so we just want that reciprocated energy, but we want it to be sincere and real. And the empathy will come when you actually do the education. When you don't do the education, it's impossible to have that deep empathy when you really don't understand. Like, I learned about the Holocaust and World War II so much throughout my senior year of high school that I just naturally built that empathy in me because I knew so much
Hmm.
that I had to do my project on it. Um, do the work. Do the work.
Do the
Catch up.
work. Somebody just in all caps said, "What is the first book I should read? Please tell me." Michelle, what do you think the first book
Oh
that she should read?
boy.
I'm assuming it's a she because all our followers are she.
I mean, see, I loved White Fragility. I loved that book. Like, it actually made me more patient. I remember setting that book down and being like, oh, okay. And like taking a deep breath and being like, I get it. This is a lot of mental and emotional work for white people to do to come to terms with their whiteness. It is a lot. It's a lot. Um, I just started reading Me and White Supremacy. I loved it. Maybe How to Be. There's so many good books.
How about
Um,
Stamped? What did you
I,
think of
I
Stamped? I think Stamped is really good entry
I
level.
think Stamped is so good. So good. Um,
Oh, you're not a she. Okay, so
sorry.
sorry. I made I made an unfair assumption only because 92% of our followers are women. Sorry.
um, yeah, someone said, so you want to talk about race. White Fragility hit me harder. It hit me
Yeah.
so much harder. Um, I had a girlfriend that read it, one of my best friends, Christina, and she was like, oh my God, I understand. Oh my
Yep.
God, I'm starting to understand. It's it's intellectual, but it is just so, I like straight to the point. I like
Hmm.
direct. I like honest. I like open. Um, so it's just one of my, I'm actually about to, I started rereading it.
Yeah. I mean,
Stamp.
also everybody stamped. Yeah, everybody. We have they're posted on our page, so just go to our page. There's a highlight called Learn, and then we're constantly posting. I haven't kept up that highlight very well. I'm sorry. I need to add the stuff in. But if you scroll through our page, you'll see
Yeah.
books and
Um,
different
so
things.
so Stamped is actually by, the one that I would recommend is the one from by Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi, not the
Hmm.
one, not Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram Kendi, because that book is about
Right.
that thick and it is so intense. I think that should be the
Yes.
follow up to Stamped. Um,
I agree 1,000,000%. I love Ibram Kendi. He is just amazing, a brilliant, brilliant academic and theorist and all that stuff. But that book is it's like you're going to school. So start with Stamped, because
Yeah,
Stamped is the it's the YA version of it. I hate to put it that way. It's the young
yeah,
adult version of that, but it's
yeah.
written in conjunction. It's really great.
And you can listen to it on Audible, and it's like only 4 hours and some change. But I mean, if Stamped is on Audible, it's probably going to be like 10 hours
Stand from
minimum.
the beginning, you mean?
Stamped from the beginning, probably 10
Yeah,
hours minimum. I
yeah,
saw a
no,
comment
yeah.
that said, someone told me that maybe I shouldn't read White Fragility because it's written by a white woman. And I think that's exactly who we should be reading it about, because I don't know what's in the minds of white people. I have no idea what they're
Yeah.
thinking. I want to know what they're thinking from a white person that's going to be honest enough to tell me what they're actually thinking. And Robin DiAngelo has been doing anti-racism work for like what, like 20 years or
She's a
something.
sociologist.
Yeah,
She's look, do I think most of the books you should be reading are by black authors? Absolutely. But I also think that it is crucial that you hear from white people who have been down that path of anti-racism, and so that you can understand what it's like, and Robin can
right.
do that.
Exactly, exactly. Because for us talking about um racism with them, it's almost like, we're kind of looking from the outside in, because I don't know what in someone's mind makes them hold on to such a to racist ideas,
Right.
because I don't so yeah, just re-examine that. And I recommend the book to literally every single person that I.
All right. Well, no, my headphones just died. I think I can only hear you through one, and we have taken like way more of your time and emotional energy. And I just want to tell you, and I think everybody here agrees, you are so beautiful inside and outside.
Yeah,
And I love you, and I'm so grateful to have had fate make our paths cross and
yeah,
to be in this with you. And thank you so much for like all your vulnerability and openness with all of these wonderful people who want to learn from you. So,
no problem.
Michelle, everyone.
Yeah, and come back next Monday. Melissa and I will do this every Monday. We'll do a Q&A. Don't miss the live that we have on Wednesday. I'll be going live with Sophia Bush about showing up. So do not miss that. I think I'm going live with Sophia at 8 p.m. So yeah, tune in for that. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks.
We'll see you next week or on Wednesday. See you Wednesday
Yeah.
first. All right. Bye.
Bye.